I'll kick us off and just say good morning to everyone. I'm Alexis. I'm a program manager at the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. And today's event, this panel discussion, is part of our procurement readiness series, which we've developed with the generous support of one of our partners, Walmart, all to help veteran-owned businesses successfully navigate this complex world and journey of corporate procurement. Over the last 4 weeks, we've hosted a series of virtual workshops on topics like supply chain management, creating a strong first impression with your brand, and we've even hosted a pitch readiness workshop. But beyond these live workshops over the last 4 weeks, we've also been collaborating with some very talented and smart humans, business owners, corporate leaders, different business coaches, university professors, a good mix of people to build out a comprehensive resource library. The library, which will be hosted online on the IVMF website, is going to be packed with different videos, reading materials, worksheets, things like that, all aimed at guiding veteran entrepreneurs on their path to success in private sector procurement. So our mission with this is pretty clear. We want to see more veteran entrepreneurs successfully enter and thrive in this space. So today we have a panel that features 3 business owners who've experienced the various ups and downs that come with being a part of the supply chain for large private enterprises. They're going to be sharing their stories, challenges, tips for how they've navigated this space. So with that, let me just briefly introduce our panelists to you, and then, of course, they'll introduce as well. First up, though, we have Andrew Arbgast. Andrew is the founder and CEO of Arbo's Cheese Dip, based in Memphis, Tennessee. After a 10-year Army career and a stint in corporate sourcing at International Paper, Andrew launched his queso business. Somebody called you the chief of queso or the king of queso earlier this
Mandarin
morning,
cheese.
and I like that.
Yeah.
So Andrew now runs that business, working with multiple retailers across the Southwest, and is a 2023 Golden Ticket winner for Walmart's annual open call event. We also have James Lee III, who's the founder of J. Lee's Gourmet Barbecue Sauce, which is a 4-time world champion barbecue sauce. James began perfecting that recipe while on active duty and has since expanded that brand nationwide. We also have Elena Meyer. She's the owner and president of SC Datacom, which is a nationally recognized and integrated security systems company. So Elena oversees her company's rapid growth, which is now a multi-million-dollar enterprise, and works with clients both across the public and private sector. So welcome to our wonderful panelists, and thank you so much for volunteering your time today, and willingness to kind of share your insights and experiences with everyone. So let's dive in, shall we? So the first question I am going to ask to all of you, when entering into the private sector, we know that can be a big leap for small businesses. So for each of you all, what motivated you initially to make that transition, take that first step? And maybe what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in securing your first private sector client?
Sure. Throw me into the hot seat first. So my first private sector client was a local hospital here. And that was a really big deal for us because that was the account that allowed us to move out of the spare bedroom in my house with a bunch of cameras on plastic shelves and into a real office that was like 600 square feet, but wasn't my home address. So that was very cool. And we got in there through relationships, which is part of the beauty and downside of the private sector, I think, as we've talked about previously. But in this instance, the security director had just retired. And one of my sales guys had a good relationship with the woman who took over that position. And she was kind of looking to bring in her own relationships to that program and had a good relationship with him, and that allowed us to get a foot in the door. So relationships were very critical with that account.
I can't use the same one, Elena, but I would definitely double down on that. I think what pushed me into this direction was, not because of my sourcing experience in corporate, but just wanting to do something bigger than, leaving the service and going to corporate. It's like it worked for a little while, but over time it didn't. And my thought was, if someone else can come up with a recipe and figure out how to put it into a container and slap a barcode on it and sell it, then why can't I do that with my dad's cheese dip recipe? So I think about things very simply, and then I go for it, and then I learn all the lessons along the way. I'm not saying that's the best practice for everyone, but it was for me. And I think my theme was perfect is the enemy of good. And I struggled with, okay, I want people to take me seriously, right? And if I were to approach a grocery store, and my first private sector client was just this small independent grocery store here in Memphis that sold a lot of local products. So my thought was, well, I don't want this to look like, this came from the farmer's market. I want it to look professional so that people would take me seriously. But I spent a lot of time, I'm not going to say wasted time, but I perfected like this retail ready container. And I didn't push go because I didn't have a labeled like case, a master pack or whatever to put it in. I was using these Home Depot moving boxes, right? So I was like, I can't do this. This doesn't look legitimate. And someone was like, who cares? No one's buying the box that you're selling this in. And so eventually I was like, all right. So I just started selling it in these 24 case Home Depot moving boxes, and it worked, right? At the end of the day, something I was worried about was never even an issue. So I think trying to perfect something before you're ready to go may not always be the best case. In many cases, it's not.
Well, I'm Jay Lee with Jay Lee's Gourmet Barbecue Sauce. I think that my biggest thing was being a perfectionist. Making sure that just being a hard charger and making sure things go the way we wanted them to go. When you go places and stuff like that to command the room and stuff, things like that. So I never want to put anything out. I want to put things out that people would love. When we made our recipe, my dad gave me the base for our recipe. I was the acting first sergeant down in Fort Rucker, Alabama at the time. And I had already did it in Colorado Springs at Fort Carson, but I burned up a lot of blenders and mixers. Trying to create the product because of the brown sugar and stuff like that that's in it. Uh, a lot of mixing up things with spoons and stuff like that. But it finally dawned on me one day, hey man, look, I need to use a handheld mixer instead of using a blender. Um, but the whole thing is about strictly about relationship. Having a relationship with people. It's all about your character, your morals, your respect, what you about. You got to be a hard charger. You got to go out here and you got to get it. You gotta have that attitude of we don't fail. That's the attitude that we have. We don't fail. We're gonna make it happen. It's by any means necessary as long as we do it the right way. you know. So getting it bottled and getting it into a local store, just like Andrew was talking about, that was the thing that we did. We started at the farmers market, well, really at a Gulf Coast fair, and then we went to the farmers market. But we had to make sure that we had everything in a bottle with the UPCs and all this. And it's crazy because it seems like every product that we launch is something wrong at first with the label or something. You know what I'm saying? Like the first time when we got ready to launch our barbecue sauce, we sold all the bottles, we sold out. But guess what? It had the wrong phone number. So nobody could get in touch with it. So So it was like the selling was, I mean, you got money, but the selling was in vain. You know what I mean? And people
Sure.
was asking, where's this sauce at? Where can we find it? And you trying to get your websites up and things like that. And just like Drew said, hey, I'm like that too, Drew. I jump in it, man. Let's get it. You know what I mean? And you learn by experience. I mean, because a lot of times, a lot of people didn't want to help you or didn't want to point you in the right direction that was already in the game. I say the game meaning that business arena, and they was not trying to offer you any assistance, you know. And then they would tell you things like, "Hey, it took me 8 years to get in here, so it's gonna take you a while." But some
Mm.
people it took 8 years, but it took me 13 weeks. So uh, all I can tell you is you just got to be laser focused, man, and you got to build relationship. It's all about relationship. It's not about what you know, it's who you know. That's the bottom line. That's the only way it's gonna work out. It's about who you know.
Yeah. How is pursuing those relationships in order to advance your business benefited you, or what does that look like?
I think I think we are who we are, right? And we can learn through experience and life and mature. But I think a lot of it stemmed from my experience in the military. And one of my first battalion commander, one of his leadership lessons was 360-degree leadership. And of course, we're like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, he's saying that, you know, in a room full of your superiors, you can't act one way and then turn around and treat people differently or act a different way, whether they're peers or subordinates. So it's about that mutual respect and relationship approach you take with as a buyer, as a sales rep. It's with everybody. And going to international paper in that corporate sector, my first boss taught me, if you want, as a buyer, he said, if you want a first class supplier, you need to be a first class buyer. And at first I was like, okay, well, does that mean just buy a bunch of stuff? No, it means be supportive of your suppliers when they are supportive of you, and operate in a not just a professional manner, but I have a very compromising negotiating or collaborative, let me say that. I have a collaborative negotiating tactic or approach just for my own personality. There are times where, I'm going to need, I'm throwing a Hail Mary. I need this part expedited or flown in. Well, what's going to encourage my supplier to do that if I have treated them poorly over the course of our relationship? And so it does come down to, like, how do you treat people on both sides? And then I believe in karma, man. I truly believe, like, in helping someone out, you will get that in return. It may not be from that person, but it'll be through some other method. And so I've kind of just taken that approach my entire life, since learning all these lessons in the military and corporate, and now as a small business owner. The one thing you have to know, though, it's and expect is transparency. I love transparency. I do my best to be transparent, probably to a fault. But when something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right, and it's okay to call it out. And if you just come to an impasse and you can't move on, well, then that's not a supplier you want to work with and going forward. So relationships can stay and grow and be strong, but there could be a time where you realize, like, I may have to burn this bridge.
We've worked with a lot of people in the past who are not respectful of the value that our organization brings, and in some cases are not respectful of the people that are working really hard in support of their mission. And we fired those customers. And of course, it's taken a point for the company to get to a point where you can afford to do that. I know everyone tells you that you should immediately fire everyone who's not a good fit, but the actuality is got to pay that light bill somehow. But we're able to fire people that are not a good fit now, and I'm very thankful for that because it's not worth it.
Just like making a product, and you want to make it healthier for everybody. Sometimes you can be ignorant to ingredients for your recipe. I'm pretty sure Andrew can attest to that type of stuff. Like, for instance, using high fructose corn syrup. using sucralose. Okay, we all know that high fructose corn syrup is bad for you, all these things, and it's a filler for products. But the thing is, you run into some individuals that they want you to uh, make it cheaper, you know. But the thing is, you got to remember who you are. Okay, so this is the thing that I always say to everybody, this me personally, we don't want to give you anything, we want to give your family anything we're not going to give our family. You understand? So we're not going to give our family high fructose corn syrup. We're not going to give them sucralose. That's why you got to check these things that say sugar-free inside of stores, because they are actually using sucralose in it, and that's 600 to 1,000 times sweeter than table sugar. So it's better to just get the real thing, and just get with the regular sugar in it. But you have to know when to hold them, and you gotta know when to fold them. So basically, hey, look, some deals are just not gonna work. I mean, even though it seemed like, oh man, it's gonna be a lot, but you got to understand what you're gonna end up doing to your company taking that deal, because it can knock you right out of business real quick. you know. So the thing is, like I tell everybody, like we always gonna say about relationships and stuff like this, but you have to be you at all times. It don't matter where you go, it don't matter what you're doing, be you you know. Just like I tell a lot of people, hey, look, yes, we're educated, we got master degrees and all this kind of stuff, but guess what? When I come to talk to you, I'm gonna be me. I'm not getting ready to come in here with with the bull crap and trying to talk another way and using all these words that's longer than the street that you can barely pronounce and all these things. No, I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna be real. Guess what? You know what I'm saying? It's bottom line up front. Because most of these guys that you go in and talk to in these retailers, I call some of them gatekeepers. They know you got a great product, but they don't want to let you in, you know, uh, because of their own little deals with different people on the side, that they already established relationship. They don't want new relationships, some of them, but that's not all. But you just got to be yourself and, be who you are and stick to your morals and your respect, and ensure that hey, you keeping your character intact, and making sure you do the right thing at all times. So that's just what you got to do. No matter what deal you get, no matter what deal you're not going to get, be you. Do not, hey, don't sell your soul, be you.
Getting into large retail, that was my vision, is I'm going to get my dad's recipe made and scaled, and I'd love to be, nationally present in every retail, every state one day. So that was the big goal that I have. And, within 3 years, I'm halfway there. I'm in, about 25 states and several big retailers. But then I start to realize, like, this is not what I thought it was. And you're giving everything that you're asked, right? So a retailer says, we need you to execute these promos on these dates and give us this much free product. And in hindsight, I should have really looked at the numbers, but I put more trust in their requests and just said, yes, I can do it. Well, then it got to a point where that relationship was abused, right? And what I mean by that is they don't want any vacant space on their shelves. And so they're over ordering, or they mistakenly over forecast how much product they're going to need for a specific promo. And then I have a shelf life. So 120 days later, I find out that, $75,000 in product is disposed of, and no one told me. But that's money they're not paying me, right? And so the obvious thing is, like, fight to get your money back. And I tried, but then I let this go on for 6 months because I just had this hope that maybe they'll do the right thing. Maybe they will compromise and give me some trade, some dollars to spend on promos, or they're going to make this right. They're going to make me whole somehow. And at the end of the day, they wouldn't. And so I got physically ill, mentally. Like, this was a very tough thing because this was a dream to be in this retailer. And I remember it was a Friday about 2 months ago, and I sent that email, that Dear John letter, basically saying like, I had much better expectations for, doing business with you all. This is the predicament I'm in, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to part ways. And they said, "Hey, thanks, best of luck." And I'm like, "That's 75 grand. That's everything. I could go bankrupt, right?" Like, and I had to figure out how to come up with this money. That's my livelihood. And so to see that response, it's again, it's like, it's not personal, it's business, but it's personal for you when you're the owner operator, and this is how you make ends meet. But to go along with that theme of like, hey, not everybody's on your team, not everybody's your friend. And even though this may be your biggest customer, if they're sinking your ship, you need to go. You need to let them go.
So
You
I'm
know,
hearing from your experience, I think, James, and also in what Andrew was saying too, is you can't expect, while you're forming relationships, you all made this point, right? You still can't expect these other businesses to always put your business first, right? That's your job. So yes, it may be a dream to get into these retailers or secure this, this contract, whatever it may be, even if it's not retail. But you still have to look out for number one, right? And mind your business, understand, if there's product sitting on the shelf, watching your margins to say, hey, where are our sales at? It's not just kind of a sit it and forget it situation when you get a contract or an agreement in place with one of these stores. Is that a good summation of what you all are saying here?
Yeah, you're only I mean, you have to look out for your best interests, because assuming that you're taken care of is the you have to ask the hard questions at the beginning. I think that's where it's like, when you sit down and you receive a new award of business or you're giving an award of business, it's one of those things where you got to read the fine print and ask those questions. So what if this happens? And I wouldn't have known to ask that until it happened to me. But it's getting ahead of those things now. And if they say like, hey, that could happen, and if it does, you're responsible, well, then I think there has to be some mitigated risk where it's like, okay, well, I'm only going to sell you this much at a time, for you to sell through that. I'm not worried about your, vacant space on the shelf. Like, you can manage some of that to a point, right? And you can say no. I think that's what we lose. We lose that confidence in ourselves as a small business to put our foot down or to ask for things that we're afraid we already know the answer to.
I think that's a great point. I think everything's always up for negotiation. A contract is really just a proposal of terms. It's not, the only field there is not your signature field. Now, of course, there are some people that are unreasonable and it's their way or the highway. That may or may not be we want to deal with them, make or break indicator. But for instance, payment terms. So we do quite a bit of business with the federal government, and we love doing work with the VA because they love doing work with service disabled veteran-owned companies. There's the Prompt Payment Act for veteran-owned organizations, which makes your payment terms net 15. And so that's my proposal for all customers, that they pay us net 15. I will accept net 30, but we get a lot of people that try to sneak in you get paid 30 days after we get paid, and that doesn't work for us.
And so that's something, is that an experience that you've had to go back and renegotiate on something agreed
Totally.
to? Okay.
Yeah.
So that can be done, right? I think, to Andrew's point of, do it, and then you kind of learn from the process and make some better decisions, or different decisions, I should say, the next time around.
Mhm.
That certainly can happen. Don't be afraid to speak up. But yeah, what are some of, I guess, if you could say like the top 2 to 3 or however many you have, of what are the key things now, having lived through some of these experiences where, hey, I might have done some things differently. What are those things you're looking at now or looking for now when you're entering into a new business relationship? Things that you're like, all right, I'm looking at payment terms, flip to that page, or, you know, some of these hidden fees that we've gotten hit with before. I want to make sure that's going to work for us. If you could name a few, what are some of those key items that you're looking at?
Well, I guess one of my number ones is strategic value of the account. So my ideal customer is a little different than these guys in that I'm a service provider. So I'm looking to have a long-term relationship with these people. I'm sure you guys are looking for long-term customer loyalty as well, but it's a little different with a product versus a service. The scale of the job can kind of ebb and flow with the needs of the customer. And so I look at strategic value. It's not so much that, hey, I want my average deal size to be $50,000. So if this buyer isn't going to solicit at least $50,000 worth of services, then I'm not interested. They could meet that minimum purchase requirement, which is an internal soft requirement, by 25 different sales orders, you know, in $2,000 increments. They could have a large upgrade at the end of next year that we only learn about by getting our foot in the door and establishing that trust with this first little job. So I'm looking at everything. Is it going to be a one-time instance where they're never going to call me again? They want to negotiate some crazy terms where they pay late and they pay the cheapest rate, and I know I'm never going to hear from them again. Or is this going to be a long-term relationship? And I think the best indicator that someone is looking for a relationship is what Andrew said. How do they treat their suppliers? Do they treat them as entities that are just there to be negotiated down to the penny, or do they treat them as partners that offer a valuable service that they recognize that their organization needs and they're looking for quality? And if it's the latter, that's someone I want to work with.
So does that come into your point you said earlier, right? It's like you start with asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
What's your problem? What's the pain point? How am I or my company specifically going to come in and help relieve that? And if what I'm hearing from you is maybe if that's not really clear, then you
Right.
might be getting into something that's a bit more of a transactional relationship.
Totally. And a lot of times, I don't even have a percentage here to generate for you, but it has happened as a woman-owned business, as a veteran-owned business, in an environment where we deal with a lot of, obviously, the government set-asides, but also construction. There are different incentives for shopping woman-owned, even in private corporations, right? Different minority programs. Oftentimes, people are looking to check a box that they have received a quote, and they're not actually going to spend money with us. We're just helping them prove that they're making an effort towards supplier diversity. And that means a lot of time and paperwork on my end for no return. So I have found with my own sales staff, sometimes it feels a little icky to ask about their supplier process. Do they have these programs? What is their deliberation? Critical factors. Is it price? Is it best value? I mean, ask those questions so that you understand how to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, I think some of the top two, three things that I think I know now that I wish I would have known before is it's the biggest one is cost, because we all hear cash is king, and the importance of cash flow. It will make or break your business. And can you versus should you? If I'll use my own industry, and if it's a major retailer that I would dream of being in one day, my goal of growing nationally, maybe I should be a bit more patient and a bit more strategic. And what I mean by that is, if the cost to ship is going to severely impact your margins to the point where you're either going to break even or lose money, like, take a really close look at that and look at every possible scenario and variable and weigh that with what the price is that you're going to give them the product. And if you are saying, look, I can do this, I don't know if we're going to reach the SRP that you desire, the retail price that you desire on the shelf, but I can sell it to you for this. If you order this much more, I can sell it to you for that, rather than just kind of pigeonholing yourself into a spot where it's like, hey, this is it, I can do it. And then, 3 months, 6 months later, you realize like, I wasn't ready for this. And so I think it comes down to like, your margins, but also how you're sourcing everything that comes into your margins, your freight, your services, all of your overhead. And it's a constant validation of where your margin is versus how much it's fluctuated, and can you sustain the business in a long term. We don't want to. No one wants to just uh, reach an agreement on an order, and then it's not something that's going to be a long term. That's not my practice. My goal is to get in and stay in. And so I think that's one of the biggest lessons learned for me. And then the other one is, the contracts, right? Like Elena said, we have to start somewhere, and they're sending over their proposal. They hope you sign it, but you have to look at it and have those conversations where it's like, hey, look, I have net 30 terms with my manufacturer, and I would really prefer to have at least net 30 with you, so that my cash flow is aligned. And you'd be surprised so many times. It's like, yes, but they'll put some low hanging fruit in there because they don't want you to ask for the larger things. It's just protecting yourself in the long run.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Andrew, you said it all, man. What can I say behind that? Lena did too. I mean, you know, with the whole thing is if I can do something, the profit margin, and you have to be aware of you may make an agreement with these guys when you go to these meetings with the buyers, and you all agree on one price, and then they say, for instance, hey, we're going to sell your product for $3.99, and you're thinking, hey, it's going to be $3.99 on the shelves, but then you find out later when they hit the store, it's $4.69. They love playing games like that also, because they know you're small. But the thing is too, and other things that I've learned in this is being a minority-owned business and all these types of things with this diversity program. I promise you, I haven't experienced one yet that don't need to be revamped, because you pay this fee, $350 or whatever it is, to say you minority, and these entities, they have a program in place, but they do not work. The system is broke, to be honest with you, because they treat you as though you're Procter and Gamble or some major company when you're a small business. But if you have a diversity program in place, you should really take the time out to push those businesses and help them really grow. Not just to say I'm checking the box. We have small business in our store. Because you have to do things to set those small businesses up for success. You know, but I
Yeah.
have I've dealt with a lot of them, and I just tell you straight up, it's broke. The whole system is broke because they're treating small businesses like they're major corporations instead of taking your time and helping these people grow, giving you good product, location inside of their stores. You know what I'm saying? Making your stuff visible, different things like that. Some of these entities, they'll put you on the bottom shelf, but everybody know you're a new company, you're small business. Andrew, you might be able to vouch for this. If they got you on the bottom shelf, man, you got to get on your hands, and once they sell the first two, you can't see them no more. You got to get on your hands and knees and look under there. Who's gonna do that? You know what I mean? So, I
I
mean,
mean, I
you got to
think
really
to
look
that,
at
to that point, it's like that's where you figure out who are your partners? You know, who are you meant to be with and who are you not meant to be with? And sometimes it takes a little bit of trial and error. And I would say the biggest retailer in the world that I have the opportunity to do business with is my best supplier. They're the most transparent. They put me on a pedestal. They support me being a veteran owned business. And it would seem unlikely that that would be my experience, but it has been nothing but great outcomes. And then it's sometimes the ones that you expect are going to, you know, be that good, that strong supplier, strong customer, or whatever, turn out not to be the case. So I'm such a proponent now of knowing who I'm doing business with and then seeing the red flags early on.
And that comes back to the relationship building aspect of it, right? And I think you said
Right.
transparency. So we've kind of got this, two things are true at the same time. Build the relationships, know who you're getting into business with. Do they value the things that you're bringing to the table? But you've also you got to know your stuff. I've heard you all while you're answering these different questions, talking about, and in this last question, right, of the what have you learned? You all talked a bit about, you know, knowing what your numbers are, so that if you start to see these red flags, these relationship red flags, that you are knowledgeable enough about your business and what's best for your business. You know your numbers, you know your margins. You can come to the table with something to negotiate and find yourself some favorable terms. So let's switch gears into that a bit, right? The negotiations, the contracts. How important is it to just know the ins and outs of your business? And when it comes to your own supply chain, what are the factors that you've got to remain laser focused on? Look at the numbers constantly. Like what are the heaviest, let me try and rephrase that again. What are the key factors that you're looking at in your own supply chain in your business that have proven the most effective, I guess, negotiation points for coming to the table with these buyers and potentially negotiating a better deal for yourself so that you do have that long-term relationship?
So I think one of the things that has been really critical for us is communication skills. I think that's just such a fundamental of any good relationship, and supplier customer relations are no exception to that rule. You have to figure out how to articulate yourself professionally and clearly. And I'm a huge advocate for putting everything in an email in a fashion that makes it really, really easy and compelling for the person you're talking to forward to their boss and get their boss to say yes. You're not just asking for, I want to move up from the bottom shelf to the third shelf. You're asking this major corporation with X stated amount of supporting veteran business goals to help you, a veteran-owned business, achieve your goals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's been really critical. The other thing, and I don't really have a silver bullet for this, but leverage. So with our suppliers, we have one of our top suppliers right out of the chute offered us 90-day terms, and that's huge. It's very helpful to our business, obviously very helpful to our cash flow, but is also a very nice piece of leverage that we've used to get a minimum of 90-day terms with all of our suppliers, because we now have it in hand. And if you want to keep our business, you've got to rise to the occasion and meet the bare minimum expectation, which is now 90 days. So that took us, many years in business to achieve, but now that we have it, it's being open with our supplier partners. When they ask me the same question I ask my customers, how do I earn more of your business? I'm very upfront. Terms, that's what I want. And they can meet it And that's great. And I find that many of them do, or they're not getting our business, because that's what's most important to me.
That's a great question. You said you always ask with or start with questions. How do I earn more of the business? And then come with some receipts, right? Like
Absolutely.
here's some suggestions, but like, yeah, what do you?
Respectfully and candidly. But I also think that feedback is really important. So we have in my industry, manufacturers build the product. They don't sell to the end user. People like me are the middleman, where we put all of the pieces together and install them. So it's a funny little triangle that does this, but our distributors often have access to the same lines at varying, price differences that kind of fluctuate on a regular basis. And I'll go back and tell my big three, hey, you quoted me this project, and your price was 5% higher. I want to make them aware of that so that they have the opportunity to sharpen their pencil and earn my business, but also so I'm not wasting my time or theirs on the next one. Because I'm not satisfying an internal requirement for 3 quotes. I am earnestly looking for the best deal. Price isn't everything, but it is important.
I think with getting to that best outcome is going to require some give and take, obviously, on the negotiating side. But every customer I've dealt with has been different, and it could be, what is your delivered cost? And they're just asking you, like, how much is it going to cost us? And I always want to give them options. I can say, well, I have a tiered approach. Based on your location, I need to ship at least a minimum of 3 pallets. And that would be at this cost. Well, at 6 pallets, it'd be less, at 9, and so on. Or if you don't want to work around minimums, you can buy it through our third-party distributor, where their minimum order quantity is 1 case. The cost is higher, but I want to give them as many options as possible. Well, if they come back and say, well, we really need this to be at a $5.99 retail or a $6.99 retail, but we need a 50% markup, they need a margin of 50%. Then they're kind of putting that back on you to lower your cost, right? Well, you can say, hey, I don't, in order for me to do that, I can't pay slotting fees. I'm not able to run any promos. So you kind of just figure out where's that sweet spot. And in most cases, sometimes this is my technique, but I'll get to the point where I'm showing them, this is my cost. And these are the 3 freight quotes that I have for shipping my product from here to New England. And I just want to show you, so you don't think I'm like padding this. So I think some transparency maybe helps some cases. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's got to work for both parties, right? And it's okay to not reach an agreement, because you probably just saved yourself and them as well a lot of heartache in the long run. But if there's ways for you to show them value in order to get that price, that delivered price of whatever it is, it's just the more you can do, that's not going to compromise your cost or your profit and everything else. I think there's sometimes you'll just have those conversations, and you'll know that they don't really want the product based on the stance that they take in their negotiating. And that's the way this works, but it's best to avoid that. And I think one other one as well is, looking at economies of scale, right? So the more I buy and ingredients and raw materials, in theory, the less cost, I receive better pricing. And so if I'm able to go back to my supplier and say, I know I'm buying this for this amount today. However, we've got 4,000 stores that want this product, but they need it at this price. Can we agree on, because we're getting you, this much, 100% volume increase from where we are today? Can we look at a lower cost from you for me to resell it? So, I mean, there's a lot of creative ways you can use to reach that agreed to price. Chicken or the egg?
Yeah, exactly. The whole thing is like being able to negotiate. Don't never come to the table with your drop bottom price. Don't never come to the table like that. Always have a little wiggle room, to negotiate, to to try to get your product inside with that retailer. And a lot of things we would do is like demos, different things like that, to help push the product. But that's one of the biggest things. You got to always have room for negotiation. Great communication and negotiation. If you can't reach a deal, don't try to make yourself reach some that you can't, because just like Andrew was saying, I mean, you will get stuck. You will get screwed with shipping for sure, because shipping, it changes every single day. You may get a quote today for $200 for that spot, and tomorrow it's $700. So you have to just try to figure out, what to do in order to keep, in order that you make profit and you give everybody a quality product.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with you that you should always come to the table, ready to negotiate, and that your first offer shouldn't be your best offer. That's been challenging for me personally because it's not how I operate. I operate from the, as you said earlier, also bottom line up front. Here's my best deal. Here's my fairest deal. Let's move on. But there are customers that need to feel like they're winning.
Right.
So they want to negotiate something. So I've learned to keep something in there for those difficult cases that will not let me leave until they've, won the arm wrestling match. And that's challenging.
And you're right. And that's the whole key, that they want to feel that they are winning.
Yeah.
Period. You know what I'm saying? They are winning. That's what they care about.
Yep.
So there's a little bit of a dance that happens here with the negotiations is, hold a few things close to the chest so you have something to negotiate with, but also transparency is key, right? You want them to feel like, or they want to feel like they're winning, but everyone also wants to feel like, hey, there's a chance. So I think Andrew spoke on this, the transparency component, and Elena, you just said it too. Here's my best price. Here's my like happy medium price, best case. You've got to almost put that stuff out, but out there so they know and they feel like you're not trying to get one over on them. And you've just got to have that reserve in the tank. So I don't know how to tell anyone to do this dance, but do you have any tips there on what is the fine line? Like, how do you first approach, especially maybe in a first meeting as people are just getting started, you're first building these relationships. How do you approach some of the first meeting with a buyer? And what information do you need to come to the table with? What's been helpful in kind of showcasing in that first conversation? And what are you holding back? And yeah, how do you walk that line?
You
Any
need you
tips
need to
there?
Yeah, you need to know your product. I mean, you need to know your product. You need to be confident in what you are selling. You need to know exactly what makes your product different from everybody else's. What can you offer that other people are not offering? You understand? So uh those are the things that you need to be knowing, ensuring that your product is ready to go, and that you can ensure that you can fulfill the orders in a timely manner. So you got to know all of these things, you know, and you got to also be open for negotiation, period. Whenever you go to any buyer, you still gonna have to be open for a negotiation. You cannot go in there like, hey, I'm set on this. This is how it is. You can't do that. You know, you got to have some type of wiggle room for negotiation. Even if you're saying, hey, look, I tell you what, because a lot of buyers want to hear this. Okay, we'll run some specials 3 or 4 times a year. You know, they want to hear those types of things. or we'll get an ad in your paper or something like that, and we'll run a sale for 2 weeks or something, or twice a year, something like that. We'll do something during football season or something. They want that type of stuff, even if you go in there and you present them with a price and they agree to it, but they want something out of the deal where it can drive volume and also create a lot of sales for them.
And would it be fair to say, and this is, to everyone, in order to be able to negotiate and have some wiggle room to make those kind of deals, you've got to have some flexibility or at least options in your own supply chain to be able to to negotiate some of those things. If you're pigeonholed and working with a single supplier and you know their costs and they're not going to budge on them, you might find yourself in a predicament if you don't have your own supplier diversity. Does that
Well,
does that
if you're ready,
resonate or?
yeah, but if you're ready, you don't have to get ready. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, what I'm saying with that is, no matter what product or no matter what service you offering, you got to already be ready to know that, hey, they can come back and say this, they can come back and say that, they can want to go this way. You got to prepare yourself. It's not checkers, it's chess. So you got to prepare yourself for what can be asked or what they can say. Hey,
Mm,
look, you got to prepare yourself from the beginning. Before when you getting ready to get your SRP right or whatever you're gonna wholesale this product for, you got to figure all of that in. Like Andrew saying, you got to go to the drawing board and make sure that, hey, okay, this costing me this, shipping gonna cost me that. The finished product is gonna cost me this, and you got to know all of those things. You
mm.
know, and you got to have a minimum. Like you got to set a minimum. Hey, look, if you get this from me, I will, because they're gonna ask you what's your minimum. Okay, so you could say I got a pallet minimum or 50 case minimum, but you got to have a minimum.
Yeah,
And
to your point, checkers versus chess, I have found in my business, and again, a little different because services provider versus a manufacturer than you guys, but my ultimate checkmate, to still stick with your analogy, is autonomy. I think that's such a weapon as a small business that you can really differentiate yourself with. If you're having that conversation with someone and you know your numbers, you can arrive at a solution right there rather than having to go back and think about it and get 18 different pieces of paper, signed off on, which ultimately what you're doing is giving them a dozen different opportunities to say no or come back at
Exactly.
you. If you know your numbers and you can stay agile, you can stay in the driver's seat. So what's the problem? How do we solve it? How low am I willing to go? Let's do it right now.
and
Exactly.
another one you could leverage is thinking about it almost as like in Elena's sense. Maybe she uses referrals. If someone's on the fence or you're offering that right away, hey, would you like to talk to this client who we just provided the same service? Or in our case, hey, look at the grocery stores that we're currently selling in, and show them pictures of the retail price. Like I know you're not sure if it'll sell at 5.9 or at 6.99, but it's selling somewhere else at 7.99 in a lower volume store, whatever it may be. I think it's using everything to your advantage, and then that autonomy thing. People love doing business with the owner, and
Mhm.
like no one,
Yes.
we don't have to get anything vetted or approved. It's quick, right? And
Yep.
and so doesn't mean you have to give them a yes or no on the spot. You can say, let me scrub these numbers real quick. I should have something back to you by tomorrow on the different options that we can provide. But I do feel like one of these will be a perfect outcome, and it's just a matter of adjusting from there. So
And
So
that and that and
no,
that. Go ahead.
go ahead, James.
Yeah, that's true. And like we said, once again, you got to know what you got and what you are offering them. You got to be able to say, okay, what makes your queso better than the next queso? Because it's just like the barbecue sauces and stuff. It's a million barbecue sauces. So what makes you different? You know, okay,
Mm.
what makes us different? We don't use high fructose corn syrup. We don't have sucralose. We don't have liquid smoke in there. You know, but then you run into the problem too, like with one of the large companies that I was trying to work with to bring the low sugar in, because we work with like heart doctors and stuff like that making recipes to make it healthy for you, but it's good. Uh, they was like, hey, we already have a sugar-free barbecue sauce in our store. But I was like, hey, this sauce is not sugar-free. It's 5 grams, it's low sugar barbecue sauce. It's 5 grams of natural sugar, which is better than having sucralose in your sauce. But they didn't want to take it because they're doing such high volume with sugar-free. Because most people, they go to the store, they don't read, they just say, oh, sugar-free, let me grab that. You know? So I mean, you got to know what you're offering them and hey, what makes it, I mean, what makes it different? What makes you stand out? What makes you better? You can't say my label, as far as what I have on the front of my label. No, it need to be in the ingredients and stuff like that. Like having turmeric. We have turmeric in our sauce, which is good for inflammation. Different things like that.
Hmm. So not only when it comes to negotiating and getting the best deal, not only know your numbers, right? Know what's going into your supply chain so you have some space to negotiate. Knowing them really well helps you stay agile in those conversations, more likely to get a deal done in the room. But what I hear Andrew saying too is don't be afraid to say, I'm not sure, but communicate it clearly, because that's part of
Right.
the relationship, and come back to them with a solution. And I love what you just said too, James, is yes, the numbers and all of that is important because let's be honest, when we're doing this type of business, they are going to be looking at the bottom line, right? They've got a business to run as well, but also know where you fit in the market, what differentiates you, and that can be the icing on the cake sometimes, right? The numbers may not be perfect, but if you have a special little carved out niche in your market, right? Hey, we're low sugar. We don't actually have all that other junk. You don't have another brand on your shelves currently that can say that. That could be the thing that also seals the deal. So I guess it all goes back to like this isn't, we want to be able to give people a prescribed formula and a checklist of things to take care of and then walk into the room and you're going to have success, but it's a it's an art, it's a dance, it's kind of a give and take on all aspects of the business. But if I were to summarize, some of the things I'm hearing from you all, it's you've got to know your business and you've got to know your market. And without knowing your product and your business well, you're not going to see the level of success that
Mm-mm.
you're striving for. Do you feel like that's a true statement, or am I coming out of left field from here? Did I?
No,
Totally.
that's a true statement.
Okay. Um, well, we've still got in our allotted time, we've got about 20 more minutes. We've got a few people on that have been, listening to you guys go back and forth and then taking in some of your advice. So I do want to also turn this over to anyone who has some questions for our panelists. It's something that we haven't either touched on or just a burning specific question you've got. Please feel free to take yourself off mute. You can turn your camera on if you'd like as well. And let's open up the conversation. Say if while people are getting their courage. Oh, John came off of mute. I'll hand it over to you, John, if you have a question. Otherwise, I'll fill time. Okay, yeah. So while people are thinking about it, and like I said, maybe building up their courage to ask questions, since we've been talking so much also about negotiation, communication, and transparency, let me ask you all another question: have you ever had someone balk at or completely kind of deny you when you've come back trying to renegotiate terms? And can you share what that situation was if you've encountered that? Again, has anyone ever just flat turned you down or really balked at you as a business owner coming back and trying to renegotiate on those initial terms?
So we had an instance of this just this month where we were given an opportunity to provide a quote for the security in a local prison. So we put in our number, and our price came to be about 50, turned it in, and the project manager called us and was like, this is a crazy number. I was looking for 300. I'm like, okay, well, our number was 450 and your number is 300. So that tells me that we are missing something, that we either quoted like a whole different system or something's missing from your quote. Could you share it with me? Can I just see, apples to apples here? And it turns out that the other provider hadn't quoted the access control. Like it was complete. We did a full key solution. The other provider had just missed an entire system. And that was the reason for the price discrepancy. So we are still in negotiations there, but again, asking for questions, and I would qualify this person as a good partner, whether or not we get the work, that they were able to be transparent with us and give us the information, and not just say your price is too high, your price is too high, because when there's that significant of a price discrepancy, it means there's something wrong.
Thank you for that, Elena. And again, have your own eyes open. Make sure things are looking right to you, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and advocate and say, "Hey, I think this is actually you didn't ask for this."
Right.
I think mine has less of a negotiation for the product I'm selling. I probably lowball myself, or have historically, just because I'm like, I don't want to lose their attention, right? And so I start with a lower price, or what I think would make sense. And so I haven't ever experienced on that side, but where I did experience that was more from a business acquisition offer. And I'm laughing because, like, at the time, someone offered me, or a company offered me $300,000 to basically buy me out. Not buy me out, but 49% of my company. And I was not entertaining offers at the time. However, I'm never going to not look at one. And so my response more or less was like, how about for 2 million? And they just were like, okay, dude, you're so far off.
That's
Yeah.
a
You were doing
wonderful
what James
example
said.
for
You were
this
coming with an
conversation.
offer where there was room to negotiate. How about 1.5?
Yeah, exactly.
See.
I was way out of the park, but
You never come in with your lowest offer first.
There we go.
Oh,
so
That's too funny. James, do you have anything to add to that? Have you ever had a partner just hard no, or give you pushback when you've tried to renegotiate? And what was that?
no. Like I said, I'm a realist, and we've experienced. I've experienced a bunch of things that Elena and probably Andrew haven't experienced, as far as going to retailers. They love the product. I have celebrity friends that even take the product to these people to stores, but they say that, I mean, like I've stated before, they still think we living in 1950 and 1960. I mean, and you done served the country and did what you need to do, but you still have to face foolishness. So we have had companies that wouldn't take the product simply because of the face on the bottle. You know what I'm saying? Uh, but it's a picture of me in uniform. So we got with Chobani Yoga. They helped us, change our label up and, get it more subdued and stuff like that. But I have had companies just, flat out say, hey, look, if you change the label, we'll get the product, because they didn't want the blackface on the label. So we we've been through a whole bunch of things like that, and that's documented facts. And I've also been through things with because of your faith. They don't want you to mention Yahshua the Christ, Jesus Christ. You do that, guess what? We went in front of 177 investors and we mentioned that. But they asked me how was we doing it. And I said, I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, for blessing us to do it. And guess what? 177 millionaires and billionaires bagged out. And the next day, we got an email that said, Jay Lee's have to find a faith-based investor. So which I'm glad it happened that way because I don't want to deal with people like that anyway, you know. But all I'm saying is, you know, you go out here and you do what you're supposed to do, and you fight for the country, and you do these things, and people are thinking that, hey, these things that they don't exist no more, man. That's not true. Hey, man, keep living. All you got to do is look and see what's going on around you. You know, everybody's not like that, but you have a lot of companies that are like that, that have gatekeepers that are like that. You know what I mean? And I mean, it's unfortunate, but we have to deal with the reality of what goes on in the world today. Like I say again, everybody's not like that. You know what I mean? Because you got it in not only the Negro race, but you got it also in the Caucasian race. You know what I'm saying? So it's basically like it's just crazy, man, to know that, you know, people will want you to change your label because of the color of your skin or something crazy. Man, it's ignorant. You know what I mean? But those are things that we went through, and that's that. Hey, look, that's real talk. I mean, we got that in emails, black and white. So I encourage everybody to keep continuing to do what you do. And like I said, to all veterans and people who serve the country, man, guess what? We don't have time for that. You know what I'm saying? We got to continue to support each other. And hey, we family, and we got to do what we got to do. I mean, unfortunately, we got people like that in the world, and guess what? Those are people that we don't want to deal with. Matter of fact, I don't even want to be in your store with that type of behavior. You know what I mean? I'm just being honest with you. Some of these stores got to go and revamp, man, and get people, move people out of position, man, in order for their establishment to grow also, you know?
I think that's a great reminder, kind of as we wrap this all up, this is where we began, right? You all said kind of right out the gate, relationship building is key in in being successful in the private sector. And you have to advocate for your business at the end of the day, and your values and what's important to you. And so while there's a lot of great tips, tricks, brass tacks kind of advice for how to navigate this space, at the end of the day, build relationships with the people that you want to do business with. And that can be your guidepost, right? You don't have to do business with anybody that's not going to be a good fit for you and your goals at the end of the day. Okay, well, any final thoughts before we wrap it up? And just to let everyone know as well, those who registered for this panel discussion, you'll get a recap email that will also include the recording. And then while we continue to work on launching and building out this resource library, all of these videos and some additional ones that we're working on will all be posted online for you to access 24/7, 365. And that link to where those resources will live will also be sent out, and you'll probably see some things in your inbox from IVMF over the next few weeks, letting you know as those things are coming live and available for you to review. So any final thoughts or questions from the participants?
Really appreciate hearing a little bit more about James and Andrew. You guys are rock stars.
No, this is fun. Thank you all for joining me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming on and sharing your amazing stories and all of the tips and tricks and hopefully some lessons learned. I know you guys are still actively, in the trenches in this case. So we appreciate you taking time away and helping us out today and talking to everyone. So thank you, and keep up the great work, everyone.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Have a great one. Bye, everyone.
You too. Bye.
Bye.